Presenting ButtY, not ButtY.
Media has been bursting with reports of sexual assault against women and children everywhere. Now it's only logical to ask why. Not why is media reporting it, but why the fuck does sexual assault happen in the first place? 5 popular explanations for why sexual assault happens exist up to now. Bear in mind, the standing varies depending on where in the world we're even talking about. The first is sexual assault is a matter of power and dominance. It suggests the men don't feel a sense of power over women, and it's the ultimate of conquering one. This may be quite the case, especially in people with low self-esteem who feel extremely dejected and ignored by the opposite gender. Welcome to patriarchal male-dominant societies. The second idea is that it is caused due to a stereotype in the role of women and of men in a society, and sexual assault is seen as the method to school those who move or try to cross borders. Gender policing seems to come into play to maintain traditional views on how women and men are expected to behave. This explanation is commonly used in explaining the problem behind why some people blame the victim for dressing provocatively. However, this explanation doesn't hold really well when considering the cases of sexual assault on people from foreign countries, and when considering why there are hundreds if not thousands of cases of minors being raped wherein 1. No provocation exists from a 7-year-old, and 2. Foreigners cannot be gender policed. Another common explanation for sexual assault is the fact that it occurs due to a lack of education and twisted beliefs. The southern part of Africa is well known for a high rate of sexual assault, which is commonly attributed to virgin cleansing, which means that men who have AIDS rape virgin girls with the belief that upon doing so they will be cured of AIDS. So yeah, the only thing that did happen was another person got raped and contracted AIDS. You can't really explain that to them, can you, right? So going back to the point, lack of education is often cited as a reason for sexual assault. That, however, can only be taken up to a point, and that point is people committing crimes against women upon retarded false beliefs. But education can only take you that far. Your books can max only tell you raping is bad, so you won't do it because there's a good boy. But the flip side is, statistically speaking, more often than not, people who are educated or come from educated families tend to be more socially sensitized to the norms we see around us in the modern world, as opposed to those who are uneducated more often than not tend to come from backward places with harsh living conditions, and a sort of desensitization to death and crime. The fourth common thinking is that drugs and alcohol lead up to rape. Now this makes sense as long as you're still blaming the individual. We are not going to be arresting Mr. Jack Daniels, mind you. Drugs and alcohol cannot and will not make you do something you otherwise would never do. They can only exacerbate a latent tendency and make you act upon latent desires. What I'm trying to say is this: if someone is drunk as hell, they would never go and put their penis in a meat grinder or slap it on your friend's granddad's face. That's just not something they're into, I hope. However, they may look at a good-looking girl and feel like they wish they could take her to bed. But when rejected, it is often the alcohol or drugs that give that extra push, or that extra shove of all the blood from your brains to your penis, kind of like a brain-dead dickhead. Almost literally. Last but not the least, another speculated cause is the lack of judicial action against the perpetrators. We're all well aware of the fact that it is thanks to the judicial system, countless acts of violence and theft are not committed every day. Don't believe me? Okay, to bring in this perspective on this, imagine a situation where NASA said we are all going to die. What do you think is gonna happen? Exactly as 2012 and those other movies figured, absolute anarchy. With the lack of accountability, everyone is gonna do whatever they want and know that there will be no one to answer to. This is where some of the best behaved would be your good old favorite staunch believers in religion. Because for them, accountability does not end with death, and the ultimate judgment is passed by God after you die, possibly melting in lava. Extrapolating this to a real situation, in countries where the government is in turmoil or there are widespread riots, there are countless threats, murders and rapes that never even get reported. Evidently many in the world wish to do things but we don't, as the consequences felt thanks to the good old justice are not to our liking. It's all cost and benefit for a lot of people here, really. The fear of consequences is what keeps many at bay. Scary reality though is that in such a situation we probably be walking by a fucking potential killer or rapist or thief every day.
Paranoia.
Thus, there is no dearth of potential criminals out there. But what really pushes some over that threshold and go ahead with it? That little push or nudge is just a level of empathy a bit lower than what most of us hold already. The inability to see a person as someone just like you isn't unique to criminals at all. Far from it. We all have, at some point, and some still do see, an entire section of people as the enemy, an obstacle in the path to achieving some greater good, and a means to achieve some pleasure from. Kinda like seen as an external thing whose existence or experience is bullshit, irrelevant to me. On one side of the coin, that bully needs to be kicked in the flippin' nuts, and on the flip side, the slut needs to be fucked cause she acts like one. Video games. We've all played them, or at least seen people play them. GTA, Counter-Strike, or all games for that matter. We don't fear killing these non-playable characters. NPCs for short. Why is it that an average person is capable of killing a very human-looking character in a game? The reason is because you know that there's things that exist, but none of it is really real, despite the immersion. What separates the actions of games to that of real life is most of us know these people here in the real world have lives just like ours, giving a sense of connect. There's no reason to feel empathetic for a digital idiot running on zeros and ones. The problem though is a large proportion of people in the world are capable of being real people around them, the same way we view NPCs in a game. Be it on a small scale wherein one person or group has fun or benefits at the expense of another, to a person or group murdering or raping for benefit or pleasure. The analogy perhaps seemed drastic at first, but the only variable is intensity. Kind of like Jimmy, the pyromaniac, burning his books or burning his school down. The essential problem is the love for fire, the cost for therapy in one, and prison in the other instance. Now there are a lot of things for which one should have zero fucks to give, like people talking behind your back and bitching about you, or your colleague trying to put you down in front of your boss, or the guy who cut you off in traffic at a sharp turn. However, not having fucks to give for the repercussions of one's actions upon someone else, wherein which you cause them harm, is the same lack of fucks that is felt by another who's extremely horny and just goes with it, without care for what the to-be victim would feel. It's empathy that separates us from many in the animal kingdom, and the lack thereof causing all this shit. There's a reason why the phrase "imagine if it was your sister or mother" works. Because it's only a familial connection that can raise that sense of empathy and see a person behind the meat. Our sense of empathy is restricted to the few immediately around us. Disclaimer, this is just a perspective and isn't put out there as an absolute truth. Without trying to be the more police. The unfortunate part is that is the only police that could work now. It isn't the police that blames women for dressing provocative, or the police that had its hands tied due to a judicial system. It's just the police that says, care more for the people around you and see them as people just like you, and there shouldn't be any room to falter.